Welcome to the Twisted Tentacle Inn. I'm your innkeeper, Vase Odin, and today we'll be going over the top 10 tips for solo play for new players. Playing Arkham Horror solo is a very rewarding experience, but it's also very challenging. When I first started playing solo, I came across quite a few roadblocks, and these 10 tips are a list I've compiled of things that I wish I would have known when I first started playing solo games. I hope that it's helpful for you, and I'm sure at least one of these will be something that will be helpful. So let's get started. This first tip is not just for solo play, but just play in general. If you're playing in standard mode, you want to play by the 2 points rule, and the way that works is very simple. Any test that you take, you want to be at least 2 points above the test, and that will ensure your highest level of success. So, for example, if you're fighting a creature with a 2 of fight, you'll want to be at least at a 4 fight value before attempting the test for your best chance of success. Pretty straightforward, but extremely important. The next tip I want to share with you is using your mulligan. A lot of people underestimate just how important being able to mulligan is. First thing I would recommend is to mulligan any healing cards, especially if it's the first few scenarios of a campaign. A healing card in your opening hand will sit in your hand sometimes for half the scenario, so you're better off using your mulligan to get a card that will be more useful early on. Damage soak cards are okay. Now, later in the campaign, I'm sure that you'll have some trauma, so healing cards may be a little bit more useful. The damage soak cards can be played early, and they're going to sit in your play area, so when you need them, they'll be there. So I do sometimes keep damage soak on hand in my first hand. Now, you should also have a solution for dealing with enemies in your opening hand. Generally, this is more important than a solution for getting clues in your opening hand if your investigator has a naturally high intellect. You generally want both, ideally, but between the two, unless your investigator has a naturally high combat or evade value, you need a way to stop creatures or you're going to die right away. Some investigators have a high combat or evade value and low intellect naturally, so for those investigators, I do recommend using your mulligan for clue gathering cards because you're going to be able to manage combat initially, at least to a decent level. Whenever possible, advance the act at the beginning of your turn, or at least when you still have some actions left. This is because a lot of times advancing the act can have an enemy spawn at your location, and if you don't have any actions left, they're going to get a free attack on you, and that's the last thing you want in solo. Any card that has you pull from the encounter deck, such as Drawn to the Flame, should be used at the beginning of your turn. This is because a draw from the encounter deck could be an enemy, or even a treachery that you need to deal with right away. If it's an enemy and you pull it as a final action, it's going to get a free attack on you. If it's a treachery that you can get rid of with an action, you'll want to do so right away. Also, try to take the draw action from your deck at the beginning of your turn. This is because you may pull your weakness, which can also be an enemy or something that you have to deal with right away. You don't really have to succeed against every treachery. Weigh the potential negatives of failing a test, and if you can handle it, for example, if you fail, you take 2 damage and you happen to have 9 health left, don't waste cards or resources to try and beat the test. This will keep your resources and cards healthy for the moment that you have to pass a test. With that said, make sure you have a way to deal with the most crippling treacheries, and usually wild icon cards are a great way to do this. If you don't have any way to boost combat and you pull a treachery that prevents you from moving unless you pass a combat test, your game is pretty much over. So have something handy for these kind of treacheries, and don't waste those cards on treacheries that are not really going to mess you up. This was a mistake that I did quite often when I was first starting out. Don't try to kill every enemy. If a non-hunter spawns at a non-critical location, you may be better off leaving it alone. Don't underestimate evade. Many enemies that don't have the hunter keyboard and aren't essential to kill can be evaded, and should be if you're playing an investigator that's good at it. A great strategy in solo is to evade, then investigate at that location, and then move. Lots of locations have one clue in solo, so this works out perfectly to help you move quickly. Also, if you have an enemy with 1 health left, find a way to kill it without using limited resources, such as charges or ammunition. Wasting a charge or ammo that deals 2 or 3 damage just so that you can kill an enemy with 1 health remaining can use up valuable ways to deal with tougher enemies later on. If a creature, location, or objective has a victory point value, you may want to go after it, but consider how many actions it would take to move there and either kill the enemy, complete the objective, or grab the clues, and check how you're doing in terms of actions that you need to win the actual scenario. If you feel like you're behind, it may not be a great idea to chase that victory point if it's going to cost you trauma or even more victory points by succeeding. Generally, you shouldn't proactively take a test just because there's a slim chance that you're going to pass, and there's no harm if you fail. This could lead to a huge waste of actions. You're better off taking resources or drawing a card for a solution. Don't be afraid to do it. A wasted action is actually a bigger cost than almost anything else in the game. Make sure you take full advantage of action economy. This is kind of piggybacking off the previous note there. Basically, you'll need every action that you can get in solo. Because you're by yourself, you can't afford to waste actions. Free damage, extra damage, picking up clues without using an action, a free move to another location, basically anything that gets something done that would have normally taken an action but doesn't use an action is extremely helpful. Take full advantage of it. I recommend you also have a method to track your actions and what phase you're in. In multiplayer, you can keep each other accountable, but it's easy to get caught up in a very long agenda advancement or a big calculation and forget how many actions you've left and even skip an entire game phase. I know this has happened to me countless times in my playthrough videos, and keeping track of recording and all that is bad enough, but just playing by yourself on a long transition, you can very, very easily forget to do certain things. So have a way to track things, and that'll keep you on point and on target. And that does it for today's video on new player tips for solo play. I hope this video was helpful for you, and if it was, please consider leaving me a thumbs up, as it makes the video more likely to be seen by other new players. If you have any questions, please leave them in the comments below, and I'll be happy to answer them. Until next time, this is Innkeeper Vase Odin from the Twisted Tentacle Inn. Check in anytime. I'll talk to you then. Take care.